Hi everyone, Gothany Mode Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of this self-titled album from Lianne La Havas. This is the third full-length LP from UK singer, songwriter, guitarist Lianne La Havas. One of the more underappreciated singers of the 2010s, in my opinion. During that decade, Lianne dropped 2 records of quality songwriting, production, and stellar vocal performances. It has been 5 entire years since the release of her last full-length album, which honestly just feels like a lifetime away at this point. And while she could have certainly put out more music over this span of time, I'm just continually blown away by how much Lianne continues to punch under her weight in terms of popularity. I just don't know, what are listeners not getting in regards to this? What is the industry not doing to put this record where it needs to be? Like, how much more standout does Lianne have to be? I want to end my rant there though, because honestly, when it comes to the songs and the performances on this record, there's not a lot to complain about. The teasers to this thing have all been impressive. There's even an interesting cover of Radiohead's Weird Fishes in the mix, which we will get into later. I also think the recording and production on this LP represents a bit of a vibe change for Lianne from her last full-length record, Blood. Not all of the tracks, but most of them seem to be recorded in a relatively raw and intimate state, almost like you're listening to a really good KEXP studio session or something, which I suppose does make sense because pulling off these really great recorded performances on NPR's Tiny Desk or a Color Show have done wonders for Lianne's online presence. So why not bring a similar magic to a new record? There's almost certainly a statement being made in this album being self-titled too, because this album, in my view, is certainly unfiltered. It feels pure. It's almost as if Lianne is saying, "This is me." Now, this change in sound is a bit of a trade-off, as the sound of Lianne La Havas here is not nearly as punchy or as vibrant or as meticulously crafted as Blood was, and as a result, there are some tracks that I really do wish featured more layers, more overdubs, or even cleaner mixing. Mostly the song Paper Thin. Green Papaya as well, to an extent. There are a lot of elements of this track that I love. The vocals, the guitar work, those swirling arpeggios are certainly hypnotic, but then the boneless bass and very vague keyboard embellishments throughout the song fill in the gaps in a very wishy-washy way, leaving the instrumental feeling very syrupy and ill-defined. By contrast, the song Courage has a much more stark instrumental presentation, and I think it's much more impactful for it. But still, having said all that, the organic performances on this record generally are beautiful, smooth, impressive. Plus, there are actually quite a few tracks here where additional instrumentation is tastefully tossed in. The track Bittersweet, for example, which is a groovy neo-soul opener, fat bass and drums, glistening keys, super graceful guitar embellishments. Lianne vocally killing it from front to back, pulling back on the start of the song on the first verse, which is really a theme for the entire album. She usually starts off a little quiet, very subtle, then vocally growing in intensity from there, with this particular track really letting loose over a bed of pianos with some girl group style background vocals. Then we move on to the even groovier Read My Mind, which I love too. The drums are very gentle on this track, but oddly enough, the driving kicks just pulsating away in the background, plus some of Lianne's vocal lines like, "When a girl meets a boy," it just makes me think of a house song, like I'm listening to a house track. There's definitely a subtle dance edge to it, even if Lianne and her band are playing things very laid back, jazzy as well. Beyond that, I love Lianne's endearing poetry about finding love and chemistry with another person. The slowly swelling instrumentation across the track is great, as well as the sharp shots of synths that always seem to catch me off guard. The track Can't Fight delivers more helpings of soulful lead vocals, subtly funky drums and bass, lovey-dovey lyrics. Lianne's guitar also has quite a bit of bite to it, as she occasionally will pull out these tapped lines and phrases. This sounds like one of those instances, which adds an interestingly crunchy dynamic to the song sound. And as far as the energy and the progression of this performance, it's clearly just a very groovy, somewhat linear studio jam with some added string sections that build up in the last leg very nicely. That extra beautiful, gorgeous soaring layer of tones does make the whole thing sound a bit more elegant than it would otherwise. Then to move on to the Weird Fishes Radiohead cover, which is insane that this is happening. Personally, I love the track. It comes off one of my favorite Radiohead records, but it's not one of their most popular or commercially successful or instantly recognizable songs. Still, though, it does end up being one of the most stunning sonic experiences on the entire record. The pacing on this version is not as intense as it was on the original, but it's still pretty faithful in terms of its instrumental development, the way the bass and drums play off of each other. Vocally, though, on the track is where Lianne seems to take the most liberties, once more playing it super subtle to start and then building up from there with these whispery vocal harmonies that end up progressing into an entire a cappella breakdown, which of course is also gorgeous, but then immediately after that the band thrusts into this final ascent with everything firing on all cylinders: the vocals, the bass, the drums, the guitars, the keys, the keys, the keys. At this point we hear what are some of the densest sounds on the entire LP. It is thick, it is heavy, it is climactic. Honestly, it's transcendental. Yes, transcendental, and I think that's putting it lightly. Then with the song Please Don't Make Me Cry, I think we get one of the best combos of neo-soul and pop in Lianne's catalog. Loving the warped and woozy chords on this track, the crispy hip-hop inspired beat. Also, it sounds like maybe some record static or something thrown into the background for some extra crackly texture. And it's not only a great song, but it's also 5 minutes of pure bliss. From Lianne's angelic vocal lines, her woozy vibrato, the super playful chorus that is packed with these wavy vocal harmonies. Make me cry. Oh, the choruses on this track are so lush, and I love the transition that is made instrumentally on the bridge, featuring all of these moaning, ghostly vocals. I don't know, it's like the song suddenly becomes haunted for a moment. Now, lyrically, if you've been paying attention to the record so far, things are pretty lovesick, but that mood changes instantaneously on the song 7 Times, where Lianne sings about her love as if it's currency and this person can't pay rent now, they can't spend her love. You're blocked, there's no access, you're cut off. This track is deceit, this track is distrust, and it's delivered over some of the chunkiest drums on the entire LP. Some very flavorful acoustic guitar licks too. And while the refrains on the hook are pretty basic, I will say the dipping and darting vocal lines they create are quite the earworm. I cry and pray all night, all day, I cry and pray. Plus the jazz, flute, solo, with the song Sour Flower, we get a pretty lengthy outro, nearing almost 7 minutes. Narratively, Lianne embraces the thematic change on the love front in a big way, as again, earlier on the record, things are quite affectionate and very heartwarming. Then all of that completely breaks like a fever, and now Lianne is dancing on her own and running her own show and saying that she deserved better and she's not crying over you, etc., etc. The whole song instrumentally is built off of another very subtle build-up, a lot like with Weird Fishes, and features an extended instrumental outro that's pretty cool and groovy. Just one of many very well-structured songs on this record. So ultimately, while I did feel there were a few lulls in the track list, and I did have some minor issues with the production and the mixing, I still think this is a great record, packed with raw talent, raw talent, raw talent, raw talent, raw talent, and raw talent. You know, with all the drama and bells and whistles and how stylized everything is musically and sonically in the music industry these days, it can be easy to forget that you can make a great record with just like some very good songs and performances. You don't really need too much else. And honestly, I think this is Lianne's best record to date. While not her most vibrant or poppy or catchy or maybe even most accessible, it is my favorite of her catalog so far. I'm feeling a decent 2 strong 8 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Lianne La Havas, forever.